Silk 106.9.
I'm joined on the Zoom interview with Hayley Lewis. How are you, Hayley? You all right?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, not bad at all. So your email came through to me here at the studios, here at the radio station, and I was really intrigued. We'll get on to the book and how you got it published and all that kind of stuff in a bit, but put a bit of history behind it. So you got two sons. Your eldest one has been diagnosed with, what was it again?
He's got childhood absence epilepsy.
Okay, so I kind of know what epilepsy is, I think. I'm not medically trained like you are, but what is absence epilepsy?
So absence epilepsy is where he'll have episodes of staring, basically vacant, and he's unconscious, although his eyes are open during that time. He's got no awareness of the world around him. And it normally lasts around sort of 20, 30 seconds at a time. Although in my son's case, it wasn't quite like that, and he did last a lot longer, but it's these brief episodes, but they're completely unpredictable, and they just have no awareness while it's happening. It's quite scary to watch.
There are some days when I've found myself just staring at a piece of paper or something. That's not the same thing, is it? Because we all kind of zone out, don't we?
Yeah, so you can shout his name and click your fingers, trying to get their attention, and there's no getting attention, and they've got no sense of danger as well while this is going on. They have no idea what is going on around them.
So does he fall, or does he just stand there, or just sit there? What else happens?
So typically, a child that's having this would be still, and like I said, typically it's for seconds up to a minute. In my son's case, it wasn't, again, quite like that. He could walk around, even though he still had no awareness. He could be, if he was doing an action at the time, he could carry on doing that action with his hands, but you could tell off his expression and his face, and he would look up and to one side, and you knew that he was having the seizure. And when he came round from it, it was funny to watch in some ways, because he wouldn't understand how he had got to the place he was at. He would remember being in one place, and he'd come round and he might have walked to the other side of the room or put something down. But typically they would stay still. It's just in his case, it wasn't quite so typical.
So how old is he now then? It's your oldest son, isn't it?
Yeah, he's just turned 8, and
Okay.
he was 5 when it all started, very nearly 6 at the time.
Did it gradually start happening, or did you just suddenly one day go,
No,
I know what that is?
Yeah, it was very sudden. I first saw something and it was so brief, I dismissed it. And then 2 days later, I saw something when he was in the bath with his brother. And that time I knew what I'd seen. Again, it was brief, and I was trying to video it on my phone. But typically you sort of miss the moment because it happened so fast. And I knew that second time what I'd seen. And then by the end of the week, it had extended to, it was lasting minutes, and sometimes it was in and out for up to an hour, where you felt like hardly any of it was with him sort of conscious and in the room. So it really came on quickly in his case. Although I've got to say, typically with children, it's not like that. It can be going on up to a year so briefly that it gets missed. Because like you say, it looks like daydreaming, and children don't listen, and you don't know what's normal and what's not. But in his case, it was pretty dramatic. There was no mistaking it.
So I take it, obviously you tried to explain to him, this is what's happening to you, and this is what we need to do, or how did that conversation start? I mean, you say he's 8, so he would have been 7? No, what did you say? 5, wasn't it?
It was just 5. It was very nearly 6 when it all started. And obviously you heard me discussing it to begin with, because you go straight to your doctor and up to hospital and tests are happening, and you're discussing it with other grown-ups and me and his dad and with grandparents and things, and you're very aware that all these conversations are happening and they can hear it and they know what you're explaining. I didn't want him to be worried about it, because he wasn't aware of it. And we were filming him all the time, trying to get evidence to show the paediatricians, and he didn't like that aspect of it. So we did have to talk to him and explain why we're doing things and what we thought was going on. And that's, I suppose, where the whole idea for the book came from. I wanted a resource to use with him, and also something for him to take into school, because he was still going to school at this point, and it was just happening at school, and I was worried that his friends would be seeing what was going on, and obviously they've got questions. Why is he doing that? What's Jago doing? And because it does look a bit strange and can look a bit scary. The good thing is, at that age, children are so accepting. So you tell them, oh, Jago does that, he's got epilepsy, and they're like, oh, okay then, that's fine.
Yeah, and they move on, that's it.
Yeah, it's got a name, okay. But I really wanted a book for him to take into school to explain to his friends, and they could all read it together and understand it. And there just wasn't anything like that. So that's when I thought, well, okay, I'll write one then.
Before we move on to the book, can we just backtrack a little bit? You said you were filming him when he was having his episodes, and he didn't enjoy that aspect of it, or what you were doing. Have you shown him the videos and said, this is what happens to you? And what's his reaction to that?
He has seen the videos, and I was worried about him seeing them because I find them upsetting to look at, and I was worried, I think he would as well. But he wasn't upset looking at them. I think we've actually looked at them again recently with everything that's been going on, and he laughs at them now when he sees them. But I think children, again, they are accepting, and I find them upsetting still to watch, but he just accepts that's what happened, and that's part of him, sort of thing.
Your professional title is Dr. Hayley Lewis.
Yeah.
Is there any connection between the normal, I say normal, but the usual epilepsy, where it's done by, is it flashing lights and photosynthesis and whatever it is it's called, and then what triggers this particular type of epilepsy?
Okay, so when he went for the EEG, which is the test with the put electrodes on the head, they check for the photosensitivity and they do flashing lights. And this didn't happen when they did the flashing lights. So we know that doesn't affect him. But what does affect him is blowing. So the test for absence epilepsy is often the same thing, where they get a paper windmill and they blow. And as they're blowing that windmill around, it brings it on. And that happened with Jago, yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting, that. So you decided to write a book then. So how did you start to do this? Have you written a book before? Where'd you start?
No, I had the idea, and it probably took me about probably a year of umming and ahhing about it and starting it and not quite getting there. And then I made the decision it really has to rhyme. So I set myself that challenge.
It's a children's book, isn't it? To explain.
Yeah, it's a children's book. Yeah. So like when you're reading the bedtime stories to them, the ones that rhyme are always the best ones. So I thought I definitely want it to rhyme. So I started it, and actually once I started it was pretty easy to write after that. I knew what I wanted to say, I knew the message, and I had lots of little anecdotes from the journey we'd been on about going for the test that I wanted to include.
So have you got a little bit of the book there at all? Can you read as a little excerpt, or an interesting piece for? Oh, look at that! That is brilliant. We'll get on to about putting the book together in a bit, and the illustration and all that kind of stuff, and then you've got it published as well. But first of all, can you do a little bit from it for us? Is that right?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll go skip to the middle bit, because my favourite bit is about when he went for his EEG. So, Daddy took him for a special test. It was called an EEG. He wore a silly hat to measure his brain's electricity. He had to sit still on a chair, just his teddy and himself. Daddy laughed and told him, "You look like Santa's elf." The test did not take long, and for being a good boy, Daddy took him to the shop and bought him an elf toy.
Oh, that is fantastic. And I love the illustration as well. So, did you get any coaching from anybody that's written a book before, or did you just go, right, I'm doing this on my own, I'll just get on with it?
Well, I did it on my own, but then I do have a friend that used to work in publishing. So after I'd written it, I sent it all to her to read over and see what she thinks. She gave me quite a few tips about it, so that was helpful.
So is that the original draft, the first draft, or have you gone over it a number of times and changed it, do you think?
That's not, no, the first time, actually, the first draft I included my children's names, and then my friend said, "Why don't you leave that out?" And I agreed. And then we've jiggled bits, but it's fundamentally it's the same, just wordings and commas and things like that.
Well, so who's done the illustration for you then? Because that's really cool.
Yeah, so we found a local illustrator. So he's from Stoke and he's called James Fox Neville. And I met up with him. I found him just from Google, met up with him, and we really got on, and he understood where I was coming from and the positive message I wanted to get out there. And he really took it on board. He actually met the children as well. And yeah, it was just really great. Really pleased with everything he did.
So let's move on now to where we are now. So it's been signed, hasn't it? Is that the right term? Published? It's out.
Yeah, I signed a contract with Olympia Publishers to get it out there, which I was made up with really. When I was doing it, I kind of assumed I'd self-publish it, but I thought, well, I'll send it off to a few different places and just see what the feedback is. And the feedback was really good, actually. And so I went with Olympia Publishers in the end, and really pleased with it. Yeah.
So can people now go to a shop and buy this book?
Yeah, so it's available on it's on Amazon, it's in WH Smith and Waterstones, and it's on the Olympia Publishers website. So yeah, it's out there. It was really exciting when you go on Amazon and WH Smith and you put yourself in there and your book comes up.
So what's the book actually called? The full title, then, so people can go and look for it.
Okay, so it's The Little Ninja, a book about childhood absence epilepsy by Hayley Lewis.
Fantastic. So what's next then for yourself? Are you do you know what, there's a series here, isn't there? I'm already jumping the gun a little bit. Maybe you could do, you can explain COVID to the little ones in a similar sort of book,
Yeah, my husband's keen for me to write more, but at the moment I'm just so pleased with all the feedback I've been getting that I'm pretty focused on this one. But maybe, yeah, I'm open to the idea of writing more.
You're going to become a TV celebrity soon, but if you carry on. Hey, Dr. Hayley Lewis, it's fantastic. It's a brilliant story, by the way. And I'm going to go out and buy it myself, actually, and go and read it.
Good, yeah. I hope you
really
enjoy
good.
it. Yeah, no, it's hopefully it's inspiring, empowering for the child that's going through, but also quite informative, helpful for siblings and class friends. It's even got a glossary at the back to explain all the medical words that they probably hear being said but don't quite understand. I just really wanted to include children in the journey, because a lot of the time it can feel like grown-ups discussing things and long medical words and hushed conversations because you're worried about the children overhearing it, but it's their illness, it's their condition, and it's them that's going through it, really. So hopefully this will empower.
There's the other side of the coin as well, Hayley, before we leave this conversation where we are, is that I suffer from dyslexia. So my mum and dad were old school. So, and when I was in the school in the 80s and early 90s, I'm only 40, by the way, right? My teachers and my parents were like, work harder, just carry on, just work harder with it. But dyslexia is a thing now. You can have courses on it, and you get looked after a little bit more. The worst thing that could happen is that for parents to see this similar thing happening to their youngsters and then just go, stop daydreaming, come on, focus, concentrate. That's not the case, is it? There's something going on here, and that book's going to help.
Yeah, I really hope it does. Schools can be quite good at picking it up as well, but often it is so brief, it really does get missed, the diagnosis, and it can put children behind academically, really, like for a whole year before it gets picked up. So it is important to look out for. But if I know as parents we worry, I think when you see it, you do know it's more than daydreaming, hopefully.
If any parents are watching this and they go, yeah, my youngster does that, what's their next step they need to do? Obviously buy the book so they can understand it a bit more. But what do they need to do?
I'd say have a chat with the GP and try and get some videos of the child doing it, which is really difficult because it happens randomly. But often it's more when they're tired. So you might find in the morning or before they go to bed, you're more likely to get a good video of it. And once they've been referred, there's tests which will then confirm it. But the video is really helpful when first trying to decide what's going on.
Dr. Hayley Lewis, best of luck with the book. Give your eldest son our best and the whole family as well, anyway. And well done on the book.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Your station, Silk 106.9.